I had a completely different show planned for today, but after the events that happened over the weekend, I need to talk about compassion. Because if I can be overly simplistic for a second, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's the only thing there's just too little of. Yeah. This is actually going to be much more serious, but I thought I would start on a lighter note. Let's talk about compassion on today's Project Shadow.
Can you hear me? I have something to say.
Hello everyone, how are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. My name's Charlie. You might know me better as sci-fi fantasy writer C.E. Dorset, especially if you're reading my new book, Crucify My Love, which is a book about healing the land after terrible things have been wrought and healing the hearts of people. Or maybe you're reading my sort of new book, The Chain, both of which are available over at Project Shadow and at Wattpad. Yeah. I feel really weird starting like normal, but I'm going to, because I need some normality in my life. If you haven't already, please take a moment to rate this podcast in whatever app you're listening to me on. It really does help out a lot. It tells the algorithm to share the podcast with more people. The more people that listen, the bigger the community. The bigger the community, the better the chance that we get to hang out with each other. And after all, isn't that what it's all about? And that's kind of why I wanted to do that call to action at the beginning, like normal. Because I really do mean it. I really do. See, I am a signatory to the Charter for Compassion, and if you don't know what that is, charterforcompassion.org. Go check it out. Karen Armstrong was given one wish by the TED Foundation, and her wish was to start an organization that would try to make the world better. And people from around the world were gathered, and the solution that they came up with sounds so simple, and that's the gold and silver rules. If you're not familiar with what those are, it's very simple. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and don't do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. That is the gold and silver rules. These are elements of every culture under the sun. Every culture has, in its own way, come to some formulation of the gold and silver rules. And it feels like we're living in a world that's gone mad and that has forgotten how to have basic compassion for each other. And I don't get it. I have a hard time with all this. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, over the weekend, there were 2 mass shootings in the United States within 24 hours. There was another one, like a day, I believe, before that. At least 2 of these have left behind white supremacist manifestos. I don't know about the third at the time of recording. I haven't heard if the third one did or not. But the reason I wanted to talk about this is living in this country and living in this culture, I used to get upset when these things happened. And the really sad and unfortunate thing is they've become so commonplace, so regular, that when they happened this time, I just went, there's another one. And I didn't have the big emotional experience that I normally have when a lot of people are gunned down for no reason. Not that there's ever really a good reason for a bunch of people to get mowed down by firearms, but yeah. And I realized that I had become a little too used to it. And I don't really talk about stuff like this on this podcast. I try to keep it light. I try to keep it, on topics of mutual interest, where we talk about comics and books and movies and TV shows and the writing process and what's going on in the LGBT community and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's all related, because what our culture has lost is the basic compassion one for another. We see this in fandom so acutely, with people attacking others for having the unmitigated gall to like something that they don't. The merciless savaging of films and books that the people savaging them haven't even read, because they feel that they're part of some agenda that's out to get them. And so here we are, in a world where people are being killed randomly too often. And that's why I wanted to talk about compassion. See, I think a lot of people get confused and think that compassion is some kind of wishy-washy thing, that it's some kind of tree hugger, hippie, liberal thing. Compassion is the hardest thing that anyone could ask of us. Compassion is the hardest thing that we will ever do in this life. Because what compassion asks from us is, without judgment, to just treat others with common decency and respect. That's it. That's the simplest thing to say, and one of the hardest things to do. It's easy to get mad. It's easy to get offended. It's easy to find ourselves getting upset at this, that, or the other thing. But having the strength and the courage to sit down with people that disagree with us, to accept that we may have differing opinions, but everyone should be allowed to live with dignity and with a basic level of human respect one for another. That life is not a zero-sum game. Life is a cooperative sport. Life is working together to make everything better, not just to help a few, not just to help my team. Because that's the problem, really. That's the basic enemy of compassion, is tribalism. This team mindset that sets in, that says, if you liked the Last Jedi, you are the most horrible thing ever. Or if you hated it, you are the most horrible thing ever. Well, tastes differ, and if it wasn't to your taste, there's nothing I can do about that. But attacking it for messages that are not in the movie, and for things that aren't even there, that's not just attacking the property of a large multimedia corporation. That's denying reality. And that's where we are in our politics. That's where we are in almost every aspect of our lives, where it's not so much important. The importance of being accurate or being fair or being just is coming in second to the thought of being right. And being right isn't about being accurate or true anymore. It's merely an act of winning. And people want to win at all cost because they are somehow, for some reason, seeing life as a zero-sum game. If people that are different from us get ahead, they must be taking something from me. And that's not how it works. For all of the heterosexual cisgendered people out there who were married, when I finally got the right to marry, when Brian and I finally got the right to marry, it did nothing to you. It didn't take anything from you. It gave us something. And that's a message that's really hard to get through people's heads. One group getting rights and getting equality does not harm others. But see, when you see life as a zero-sum game, when you think that not being able to say racist, sexist, and homophobic things somehow impinges on your right to free speech, that's one, not understanding free speech. And two, not understanding what those words do. See, this is what I'm talking about when I say basic dignity. I do mean bare basic dignity. Be it the N word, the F word, the R word, any of the words that we say by their first letter followed by the word word, because we don't say them anymore, the T word. The reason people are asked not to use those words anymore is not to stifle their freedom to use those words. It's because of the history of violence, the history of oppression, and the history of degradation that goes along with those words. Which, to be quite honest, I don't know why anybody would want to associate themselves with that history in the first place. It doesn't take anything from me as a white person to not be able to say the N-word. Because I don't understand why anybody would think less of someone because of the color of their skin. I don't understand that. That's foreign to me. And you can only imagine how happy I was when I looked through my family history and, at least so far, have found no history of slave ownership, because my family's been in this country for a while, and actually found that at least every side that was here prior to the Civil War appears to have fought on the side of the Union. So, yay! Didn't think that was going to be the case. A lot of my family's from this lived in the South, and I didn't know that they were originally from northern states. And that doesn't absolve me of what happened back then, but to know that that's not part of the legacy that my family was built on, oh man, that really was a relief. Because I don't even want the guilt by association to have somebody a couple hundred years ago have done a truly awful thing like that. And I can't say that all of my ancestors were good people. In fact, I know for a fact quite a few weren't. There's some murderers and whatnot back there. But I don't want to be associated with racism. I don't want to be associated with sexism. I don't want to be associated with homophobia. Why would I want to be associated with the most negative, hurtful events in U.S. history? Why? That doesn't make sense. So asking someone like me, a white person, to not say the N-word doesn't hurt me at all. Because I don't want to be associated with the history of that word. I don't want to be associated with the history of slavery and oppression that comes along with that word. It's not a zero-sum game. It's learning to be honest with our history. And compassion is so much more than just being nice to people. Remember, blood libel always comes before Kristallnacht. Before there are death camps, before there are racist riots and pogroms and concentration camps, there's always blood libel. There's always some racist lie that goes out to convince those who are of the chosen variety that they are better than the hated variety of people. And if you don't believe me, you can look at the history of the Holocaust in Germany. You can look at the history of the genocides in Serbia, in Rwanda, wherever they've happened. You can look at what happened in Somalia. Around the world, wherever these actions occur, the first thing that has to happen is basic dignity, basic humanity has to be robbed from the others. If you don't take their humanity away, how can you do terrible, terrible things to them? How can you justify doing terrible, terrible things to them? Which is why the enemies of compassion are many. Because there's power in fear. There is power in hatred. And it's easy, cheap power. It's like burning coal. The dark clouds choke everyone around. But it's easy and it's cheap. And it doesn't require any effort on the parts of those who are quote-unquote benefiting from it. And that's the real dark secret of our world. Never trust those who try to divide us, who try to say that those others, those over there are beneath contempt, those people over there are not deserving of basic dignity, basic human rights, basic respect. Because no matter how bad a person is, no matter how bad maybe a group of people are, you have to be careful not to extrapolate that out to an entire ethnic group, or an entire religion, or an entire sexuality, or an entire gender. Just because there are Hell's Angels and Ku Klux Klansmen, it's not fair to say that all white people are monsters. In the same way, just because there are other gangs and mobs, it's not fair, it's not right to malign all of those other people. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and do not do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. That is the simplest thing to say, and so important for us to start doing. And maybe if we do it in our lives, maybe if we exhibit it in our lives, we can act like as an example, as a beacon, to encourage others to do the same. There are a lot of people that say really nice things about me and think that I'm a much better person than I am, simply because I try to be compassionate towards everyone that I meet. And it's not because I'm a good person, it's not because I'm better than anyone else. I just have this moral conviction that that's what I should be doing, that that's the only right and decent way to act. But because that is getting rarer and rarer and rarer, people say really nice things to me because they just can't imagine how I'm able to do that. Well, I'll tell you the secret. I know what I am. I know who I am. And I know that my well-being is not measured by how badly someone else is doing. My well-being is not benefited or boosted by putting down others. It's just not. It doesn't help me at all. So in fact, compassion is kind of selfish. But it's the good kind of selfish that helps everybody. So hopefully, those of you who listen have already adopted some form of compassion in your own lives. But if you haven't, just try this simple little thing. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and don't do unto others as you would not have them do unto you. And head over to charterforcompassion.org, read the pledge, and if it's something you feel like you can do, do it. And if it's something that you feel like you can help, help. This is not a sponsorship. They did not pay me, but it's something that I believed in and supported for a very long time. Anywho, thank you for listening. I'm sorry for this, but I needed to say it. If you haven't already, please do like and rate this podcast in whatever app you're listening to me on. It really does help. If you've got a buck you can throw my way, in the show notes you'll find a link to both my Patreon and the support page. Difference between the two is people on Patreon occasionally get stuff. If you can help out, that really would mean the world to me. If you can't, that's okay. I understand. I really do. But if you know somebody you think would like this podcast, do share. That helps out a lot too. I'm continuing to post new chapters on Project Shadow and over on Wattpad. If you have any questions, comments, or topics you'd like to hear discussed on the show, you can either use the voice message link in the show notes, or you can hit me up on Twitter or Instagram. I'm CE Dorset on both. You can find links to everything over at projectshadow.com. Thank you so much for listening. Be safe, be well, be compassionate. And until next time, don't forget to have the fun. Bye.